Okay, so Jared Butler right there is shooting 41% from the three-point line this year. So let's get down and let's check out his form. So in this first clip, he gathers the ball right at his thighs. Now, in other clips as well, I have seen him gather it more up closer towards his hips. But from there, once he gathers, he doesn't take that much of a dip. His dip is more done with his legs rather than the ball itself, which is totally fine. You generally want to have a dip of some kind. It's sort of like a backswing in golf. Now, with his shot, when he rises up into his set point, he brings the ball up the middle of his body. And what that does for him is it allows him to get that elbow underneath that ball right at the last second, right when he's in his set point. Which is, you need to have that elbow underneath the ball in most cases, because that's going to allow you to have a straight shot. This is essentially the shooting triangle that I always talk about. That shoulder needs to be in line with that elbow towards the rim, and then that ball, generally speaking, needs to be either over top of the shoulder, the elbow, or the upper arm of at some point. We can also see that he does have a gap between his palm and the ball, which allows him to have control over the ball. Now, what we do see up here, which is actually quite interesting, is that he keeps his palm on, or at least his palm of his guide hand, on the ball instead of his fingertips. Now, if he was to get hit in the elbow, I would actually assume that he may lose control of the ball at a higher percentage point, but at the same time, when you're shooting 41% from the three, there's really not much that you need to change, and considering that he is shooting 41%, I wouldn't be changing something like that anyways. We also see right there that there is slightly a small thumb flick. Now, some players like Curry and Kyrie Irving, they tend to have a more pronounced thumb flick. But for this right there, that is not a massive thumb flick. If you do have a thumb flick, you don't necessarily need to change your shooting form. The only time I would is if that thumb affects that ball. So by using a thumb flick, sometimes it will stop the backspin on that ball, or sometimes it'll shoot with no arc. Those are the times that you would need to change that. However, if you're releasing that thumb flick before your hand even releases the ball, in most cases, it is only what it's doing essentially is to push that ball up more over top of that elbow, and 99% of the time, as long as you release that thumb before you release the ball, you are generally okay. We can also see from this angle slightly, but another angle as well that I will show you later, that he does release with his middle finger. That essentially creates that perfect straight shot that he tends to have. Now, we can see here that he actually does not have much rotation on that ball. There's roughly only one spin there and 1.5 rotations. Now, what that does is if there's not much rotation on that ball, when it hits that rim, it's going to hit that rim a lot harder, which means that he has a higher chance of it just bouncing out. With a lot of backwards rotation on that ball, what happens is it'll hit that rim and it stops its forward momentum, or at least slows down its forward momentum. So if it hits the back of the rim, for example, instead of just flying way out, what will happen is it could hit that back of the rim, bounce up, and then maybe hit the rim again and then bounce in, or something along those lines. You kind of want to have backspin. You also want to have backspin on that ball, because when you've got backspin on the ball, it actually cuts through the air a lot better. Now, when you're talking about a controlled environment like a gym, when you're talking about cutting through air, it's not going to mean all that much. But when you start shooting outside and there's a slight breeze, by having more backspin on that ball, you're going to allow you to have that ball cut through the air, and you can actually shoot from farther away with higher wind breezes. Now, we can see from this clip that he actually has a squared up body towards the rim. We can actually slightly see that with the other clip as well, but this one is a little bit more pronounced. So by being squared up when it comes to your hips, your shoulders, as well as your knees even, towards the rim, if you can get that elbow in line with your shoulder going towards that rim, you're going to have a very, very accurate shot. However, a lot of players cannot get squared like this towards the rim, mainly because their elbow is unable to get underneath that ball, or at least in line with that shoulder towards the rim. So this is why you'll see some players tilt away from the rim, is because they just cannot get their elbow in. So if you cannot get your elbow in, tilt. If you can, then definitely shoot this way. It's very similar to a Klay Thompson style shot, or even a Corey Kispert. Corey Kispert has a squared up body, but he does slightly tilt, maybe 5-ish degrees away from the rim in most cases. We can also see that he has a 90-90 when it comes to his hips as well as his knees, so he's going to be a very balanced shot. When he comes up into his shot, now this is not necessarily the set point where he has a lot of his shots go up from. I've actually seen him dip it a bit lower, but we also see a 90-90 on his elbow as well as his shoulder, which again means that it's going to be a very consistent shot, especially if he can continue to do this over and over again. Generally, the shots that he misses are the ones where he brings that ball back just a bit farther. We also see in this clip that there is good energy transfer. He gets off the ground before he totally goes straight with his body. Right here is when he goes straight. He is still slightly bent before he goes up into his shot. Right here, it seems like his toes have just left the ground and he's totally straight, which means that there's good energy transfer into that ball. The only thing I would really actually change about this shot, if I was one of his trainers, or if you're in the same situation as him, is to try and just get a little bit more rotation, backwards rotation on that ball, maybe flicking a bit harder, and that would be a perfect shot. It might even raise his shooting percentage by maybe 1%, and that would be potentially that game-winning shot at the end of a game somewhere. We also see that his elbow is above his forehead, so that's why he actually has really great arc on that shot. Make sure to go check out the vertical jump training book down in the description below if you're looking to be able to shoot that basketball further. Anyways, I hope that this video has helped you become a better shooter in basketball. If it has, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.